come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media network, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. This studio is 2 miles or so less from the veritable belly of the beast, the Bill Mill, on the locus of evil in the United Snakes of America, Sacramento, California, where on a bad day, I could say, the stench of sulfur is in the air and it permeates all of Sacramento. You would expect no less. This darn microphone is in the wrong spot. There we go. I think that's a little better. You gotta belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Flackbait is going to be your bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is, in fact, lighted. To my left, your right. Hey, I'm always right. Kind of like Chitums. Jesus. I talked to Reverend Ralph, and I got Ralph on my brain. A lot of good stuff to tell you about tonight. A lot of good stuff, political stuff, and some stuff that may send you 210 over 190, kind of like me. Anyway, today is Thursday. It happens to be March 15th, the year of our Lord 2018, and I haven't even finished the intro and the song is going away already. How sad. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all. Here at the saloon, nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. Don't get it in your evil little fermented head that you're going to get any free booze around here. But unlike what Jersey Joe says, we don't water it down, okay? We do not water down our booze. And certainly because of that, we don't water down our politics either. All that we're going to ask you is flush the damn toilet when you go to the bathroom. Jiggle the handle because, we still have to fix the toilet every now and then. And make sure that you tip your waiter and or your waitress. We've got a big, huge, massive show tonight. Already Mike is in chat. Welcome to chat. Welcome to Mike. We got the Traveling Cynic, otherwise known as the Cynic Who Travels. We have one viewer in the house. And Elvis is in the house, so saith TC. We're going to have Dan Butcher on a little bit later. I came across, let's see, this is a 31 tab show tonight. And so that's how you have any kind of an idea as to what kind of stuff we're going to be talking about. I want to talk to Dan Butcher a little bit later on about specific issues that have to do with Texas, and we're going to finish our conversation that we had last week between himself and me. He is Dan Butcher, the media magnate, M-A-G-N-A-T-E, not M-A-G-N-E-T, because he controls High Plains Media. And, TC asks in the chat room, do I need to put the seat down? Well, TC, let your conscience be your guide. Now, we know that Mary Brockman is probably going to be showing up, and I would submit to you, because of courtesy, and I know that you're a courteous individual, I would seriously consider putting the seat down. I think it's just the chipper thing to do. I've got a great article by Kurt Schlichter tonight where he talks about the Second Civil War. And he actually... It's kind of for Kurt, who writes kind of long articles anyway. It's kind of a long article even for Kurt, but he goes into some aspects about it that I find kind of interesting. Well, people send me stuff, and if you want to send me ridiculous crap, it's bz@shrmedia.com. Spell your curse words properly, okay? Spelling counts when you send shit to me. No, seriously, try to remove as many F and S words as you can, and then I may actually respond to you. If I could some night, no, you know what? I'm not even going to do that. There are I get emails that are just full of rampant leftist crap and filled with "I hate you," blah 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, but they do send me some things to that email or the other email or some of my personal email accounts that I've got. One of them that they sent was this. And I got to play this for you right off the bat. It doesn't necessarily qualify as a happy story or good time. Although, after I after I listened to this, it made me laugh like crazy. Now, this is Henry the Parrot, and this is his attempt to sing Margaritaville. He's been...
There's a woman to blame.
I'm sorry. I happen to find that really, really funny. I guess I've got a really strange sense of humor. And then the other thing that I was talking about last week is in negotiations with Dan Butcher coming on tonight, I was, our contractual negotiations actually came to an end, and so he did sign the contract. And one of the things that I did agree to, I did acquiesce to this in terms of Dan Butcher. Dan demanded the candy bowl in the green room because before people come on, there's a green room just like any other interview show. And people sit down in the, just like the chat room, by the way, we have fine Corinthian leather couches that are in the chat room that people in the chat room right now are experiencing. But we also have similar fine Corinthian leather couches in the green room as well. Well, the negotiation came down to the point that Dan absolutely insisted on having a candy bowl full of only brown M&Ms, and then one red M&M placed squarely in the center. And then I was reminded by White Mamba, Paul out in Florida, who comes here frequently in chat, and I'm going to have him on again just to ask law questions, that kind of thing. Anyway, he reminded me of a story about Van Halen and David Lee Roth, how they only wanted brown M&Ms in their dressing room. And everybody thought it was because of one reason. And actually, when you hear this, to me, this proves that David Lee Roth is one clever, smart, highly intelligent individual.
How many times have I emailed or tweeted or everything in between is to
brown
the real story
M&Ms.
About the brown M&Ms. Many years ago, it was part of the Van Halen contract as we toured through the arenas in the 80s that there would be no brown M&Ms found in the backstage area, or the promoter would forfeit the entire show at full pay.
Listen to that. Forfeit the entire show at full pay. That's an amazing clause in a contract.
This was touted wildly and widely as simple rock star misdemeanor excess and being abusive of others simply because we could. And who am I to get in the way of a good rumor? Please, come in, sit down, make yourself at home. I did. In fact, the reality is quite different. Van Halen was the first to take 850 par lamp lights, huge lights, around the country. At the time, it was the biggest production ever. And getting it in and out of older buildings like the Spectrum in Philadelphia, where the hockey team played, or Maple Leaf Gardens. These places were built in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s, and they didn't have even the doorways of the loading docks to accommodate a super forward-thinking, gigant or epic-sized Van Halen production. Our setup time and our teardown time was going 3 times over. We were going into Union Golden time. It was taking 6, 8, 7, 9 hours longer than it should have, etc. A lot of that was because the crew was unfamiliar with this size of a production. The rest of it was because a lot of the promoters, and it was a little bit more cowboy back in the 80s in the promotional field than it is today. The promoters frequently didn't read the contract writer, and we would have structural.
Promoters frequently didn't read the contract writer. Remember that. Very important.
Physical issues because, hey, there wasn't the proper electricity, load bearing, stress, etc. So, in the middle of a huge contract writer, keeping in mind that most rock and roll bands had a contract writer, it was like a pamphlet. We had one that was like the Chinese phone book. It was huge, and in the very middle of it, I had them place a clause that just out of the middle of nowhere, it would say, for example, there will be 12 ampere high voltage sockets placed at 15-foot intervals, not to exceed the load bearing, etc., and then just out of the middle of nowhere said there will be no brown M&Ms in the backstage area, or the promoter will forfeit the show at full price. What was the point? If I came backstage, having been one of the architects of this lighting and staging design, and I saw brown M&Ms on the catering table, then guaranteed the promoter had not read the contract writer, and we had to do a serious line check, because frequently we had danger issues or accidental issues. It's only recently that they had the stage fall in on a country act outdoors. Somebody else had the video screen fall in on them just recently, a very popular act at an indoors gig. It happens all the time, so take it serious. Well, after seeing brown M&Ms and ceremoniously and very theatrically destroying the dressing room to try to get the message across, lest we have a disaster like recently happened, the word got around that, hey, take this seriously. Invariably, I would show up backstage an hour or two early, and there would be 2 old gals in their 70s, just like the cafeteria ladies when we were in grade school, with the bosoms all the way down to the counter with big plastic gloves, and they would be separating the brown M&Ms out of the several 5-pound bags into their own jar, and that jar would then be sealed and whisked away to be given to the appropriate audience for that kind of a thing. The ultimate happened when we play, I believe, it was New Mexico, Santa Fe, something like this. We came in and their new building had just installed a brand new basketball rubberized surface. You know where they melt down basketballs and then they pour the rubber all over the floor. It's a nice squish.
Oh, if you think it was interesting, oh, it gets better.
Bouncy floor. They had a brand new gym for the team, and the promoter had not read all of the physical requirements in the contract, and our super heavy stage sank about 6.5 inches into their brand new rubberized floor. Backstage, not knowing this, I walked in and saw brown M&Ms. So I trashed the dressing room a little bit.
A little bit.
Cost probably about $200 worth of food fight and a torn cushion with plenty of feathers for effect. However, the sinking of the stage into the rubberized floor, pursuant to the promoter's mismanagement of reading not the contract, did something like $470,000 worth of damage.
$500,000 worth of damage because the guy didn't read the contract.
Cut to the media mulching machine, who reported this as David Lee Roth discovered brown M&Ms in his dressing room and trashed the dressing room, causing close to $500,000 worth of damage. Again, who am I to get in the way of a great rumor? Howdy, Dave Roth. Make yourself at home. You got a brown M&M? Just asking.
I'm sorry. That is a great story. That's a wonderful story. And to me, it shows the clear brilliance, and I apologize, it was 5 minutes long, but I was still laughing because of the parrot that was singing Margaritaville. Jeez. Okay, by the way, Dan Butcher says that he's going to be here right after the bottom of the hour break, so we're going to go into a few stories. They're there have been some things that have occurred, more news that I can't place it into the shocking category, but I will place it into the happy category, and I will place it into the schadenfreude / I fucking told you so story.
It's time for happy stories and good times.
Here's one of the best one for right now. Trump pardons former Navy sailor imprisoned for taking photos on nuclear submarine, White House says. Taking photos on a nuclear submarine. So this guy did federal time to take a photo that he wanted to send to his girlfriend on a submarine, and so he did Leavenworth time. Hillary Clinton, servers, and everybody linked to that, including Barack Hussein Obama, absolutely skip rope, right?
A renewed cry to lock her up coming from President Trump, pointing out a double standard in the government's treatment of Hillary Clinton for her reckless handling of classified materials.
Yep.
While others have paid dearly for what they say are similar, even lesser offenses, the president recently tweeting, crooked Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, has been accused of disregarding basic security protocols. She put classified passwords into the hands of foreign agents. Remember sailors' pictures on submarine?
Stop. Donald Trump remembered that guy and tweeted about that guy.
Jail. Deep State Justice Department must finally act. Also on Comey and others. Joining me now, a Fox News exclusive, the sailor the president was referring to, a former Navy machinist, Christian Saucier.
Folks, if this isn't justice getting this guy out, I don't know what is.
All right, so Christian, you took some photographs of a submarine and then just threw them out, and they were deemed, I believe, confidential, which is the lowest level of classification.
Yes,
Yet,
it's not even
you
secret.
were prosecuted and ended up going to prison. How do you feel about Hillary not?
Well, I think it's a blatant proof of the double standard of justice within this country and how the FBI and the Department of Justice were weaponized under the Obama administration to go after conservatives like myself and General Flynn while letting, unpatriotic liberals like Hillary Clinton and her aides skate. And it's just very upsetting. I think it should be upsetting for all American people that we're held to a different standard than crooked politicians.
Okay, so
This may be changing, by the way, and we're going to go into that.
you are actually not in a studio right now because you're
This guy, by the way, is broadcasting. I think he's doing it by Skype or Periscope, something like that. He's in his car.
parole or probation officer says you can't go to a studio. You're wearing an ankle bracelet. That's how serious they're taking this. Yet Hillary Clinton, I think...
Yet Hillary Clinton is merely wearing cankles. Not an ankle monitor, but Hillary Clinton-approved cankles.
had top secret classification on her materials, yet Comey came out and said that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case, but they brought a case against you. How do you...
That's right, and they also pre-decided before the investigation concluded that was going to be the end result. We don't see. There's nothing to see here. Move on. In the meantime, let's focus on the submarine guy. He's evil.
feel about that?
It's very true. I watched all those speeches that Comey gave, and it was while I was through my legal battles. And I said, well, I know a prosecutor that would bring a charge against somebody for far lesser. Mine was confidential. There was never any argument that I had nefarious intent or that I had intent to cause national harm. That's not a requirement for the law that they prosecuted me under. So it's not the requirement for Hillary. Gross negligence is enough to break that law. I basically possessed classified images on an unsecured device, my cell phone, and that was breaking the law by unlawful retention of national defense information, which is exactly what Hillary Clinton did on a much larger scale with much more secure information.
Much more secure information. Top secret, and you can look on the internet. The leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots somehow magically decline to do what what a 5-year-old would do. Mommy, Daddy, can I get on the internet and research things that are already extant.
And nothing happened to her.
All right, so when you hear reports about these text messages going on between FBI agents and the memo that we're seeing come out that shows that Department of Justice officials, FBI officials, had worked to let Hillary skate while at the same time going very hard against Donald Trump and using lies to justify that investigation. What do you think as a guy that's just a machinist working on a submarine? How does that make you feel?
Well, I think it's very upsetting that somebody like myself who served,
Stop. You know why? He's low-hanging fruit. He's low-hanging fruit. Because having worked in the federal system, I will remind everyone of this once again. In the federal system, there are, depending upon the districts, they're in every district, there are AUSAs, which are assistant U.S. attorneys. And every assistant U.S. attorney wants one big thing in his or her life. And that's to be appointed a federal judge, because a judgeship generally, not always, but frequently comes from having been an AUSA at some point in your career. Bigger areas, New York, etc., you're really on Front Street, so you have to pick and choose, and this is true. This is a truism. I know this for a damn fact. Not a magistrate, but federal judges. You're only subject to that if you, depending upon your record. What's your record? What's your win list and what's your lost list? When you make a case, you go up to an AUSA, and the AUSA will tell you essentially, I want it gift wrapped. I want the paper to be exactly this. The bow has to be 2 inches wide. It has to be tied in just this fashion. Why? Because each AUSA is determined, evaluated on their win and loss columns. So what was this? This was a case of low-hanging fruit. Go for it because, dude, it's going to be a win.
Deployments to the Middle East who proudly gave 11 years of their life in service to this country to have their life destroyed for something so minor. While Hillary Clinton clearly broke the law, that was what the law was written to prosecute people under, was for people like her, not for people like me, and lied to the FBI, lied to the American people, and absolutely nothing's happening to her. General Flynn made a mistake, and his life was destroyed as well, and he's a patriotic American who served our country. What has Hillary Clinton ever done but, steal from the American people and lie to us?
Okay, stop just there for a second. McCabe lost his job, lost everything, attorney's fees, was found to be guilty, and he will be doing time. Now compare the political viewpoint with which Flynn was prosecuted as opposed to this guy that I'm going to throw out here and we're going to talk about a little bit later, Andrew McCabe.
But she's given the benefit of the doubt because Andrew McCabe's wife, is a friend of hers and took money from her.
Didn't I tell you about that name?
It's very upsetting the more I read about it.
And what does he say the linkage is? Well, the wife of Andrew McCabe, and why did he mention her at all? The Virginia state governor. You want to talk about collusion? And the FBI saying, you know what, there was no collusion. There was no conflict of interest. Lots of money. And the Democrats and the Virginia governor with Andrew McCabe's wife and Hillary Clinton and money. Lots of it. And McCabe is found by Comey. No conflict of interest there. That's what he's referring to.
And the more I see, while I was through mine and I saw the tarmac meeting between the head of the Department of Justice and target of investigation's spouse, that should have said to all the American people. It's very upsetting the way that justice is doled out in this country.
Right. Well, if you do the crime,
Correct.
You got to do the time. It's just there's a double standard for justice in this country.
And there's a double standard for people in D.C. Here's BC's D.C. axiom that I've come to understand over a great length of time, but it was so fucking obvious and it was right in front of my damn face. And the axiom goes like this: if you're a politician in D.C., you never want to go after your predecessors because that will make your successors want to come after you. And what that says is, truly, when by the time you get to D.C., you have so many skeletons in your closet, and sooner or later people will find out what they are. You go after them, it's quid pro quo in reverse. You go after me, I'm going after you, Buster.
And perhaps the president will commute your sentence or give you some sort of pardon situation. And he watches Water's World, so that could be an opportunity to make things right.
It was an opportunity to make things right. We got about 2 minutes before the end of the break. So, Christian Saucier, the former U.S. Navy sailor who served a year behind bars for taking photos of classified areas in a nuclear submarine, has in fact been pardoned. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said this past Friday. Saucier recently received a letter from the Department of Justice saying it was taking a new look at his request for a pardon. Although he was released from jail last year, he remained under house arrest at the time that he was talking to Waters, hence the ankle monitor. President Trump had denounced the government's handling of Saucier's case, calling it a political move, low-hanging fruit, once again, for someone's AUSA, and saying it contrasted with the velvet-gloved response to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's mismanagement of classified information through a private server. The president has pardoned Christian Saucier, a Navy submariner, Sanders said in a press briefing Friday afternoon. Mr. Saucier was 22 years old at the time of his offenses, has served out his 12-month sentence. He has been recognized by his fellow service members for his dedication, skill, and patriotic spirit. Saucier told Fox News he couldn't believe the pardon had finally come through until his wife emailed a picture of the document signed by Trump, who also came in on Friday. Frankly, I think that's abso-damn-lutely great news. It's the bottom of the hour. We're going to have a little bit of a break. Come right back. We're going to talk a little bit later to Dan Butcher. We've got tons and tons of stories to talk about. A great Kurt Schlichter article. And as I am wont to say, oh, hey, yeah, more buttery political goodness. Don't go away. Hello.
Conservative media done right.
Thank you.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's no surrender ever, because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch Reaver Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians, a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless, hope to the hopeless, clues to the clueless. Sackheads Sean, Sackheads Clint, and Sackheads BZ. The Sackheads Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern on SHRmedia.com. Watch on YouTube, Facebook, and the High Plains Pundit Network. The best in late-night conservative talk, the Sackheads Radio Show, only on the SHR Media Network.
Go ahead, I'll say it again.
Some of the best A-roll is going to be B-roll.
Like, what are you talking about?
Just the last question we cut a couple seconds.
Yeah, I'm a freaking artist. I can't just come up with this shit off the top of my head. Are you freaking kidding me right now?
Good point. Exactly right.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint, and I'm with Sackhead Sean, Sackhead BZ. No communists allowed on the SHR Media Network.
Damn straight, mister.
Back to the show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. It is Thursday. It is March 15th, 2018, the year of our Lord. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being in chat. Welcome to Mike in chat, TC in chat, Mary Brockman, and a couple of viewers in chat. And I told you that we're going to have on the air tonight Dan Butcher, he of High Plains Media fame. And of course, tonight, we have Dan Butcher of High Plains Media fame. Dan, welcome and good evening to you, sir.
Good evening. Finally, BC. I am running way past my time this evening, my friend.
Well, that's okay. Things happen because, after all, things happen. Things happen all the time.
They do.
When last we spoke, we had been talking about some things that specifically were applicable to Texas. We were talking about the GOP. We were talking about some of the midterms and how people were anticipating an incredible blue wave that would smash the crap out of all the Republicans in Texas. And that was not exactly the case. Since then, there have been two incidents that I'd like to talk about tonight. I think I'm trying to strain my brainulus because I'm not sure if we did in fact weigh in on these things. I've got so many damn tabs up here to talk about. There's so many topics, but perhaps we could start with one of them being that quiet. That if I can find it here. There was a recent ruling for Governor Greg Abbott in terms of Texas being a sanctuary state, and Governor Abbott saying essentially, you know what, we're not really having any of that. As a matter of fact, we're going to have absolutely none of it. And so they were taken to court, and guess what? The courts, the 5th DCA, the 5th District Circus Court of Appeal, actually it's not quite so circus-light. That applies most particularly to the 9th over on the left coast. It ruled and it upheld Governor Abbott and what he wanted to do. And it also, in that law, it allows folks to be stopped, and during a vehicle stop by law enforcement, you can be asked if you're illegal. In other words, you can be asked about your status, which is heresy.
Right.
Heresy to be asked about that. And the thing that I found absolutely wonderful is that law approved now can hold sheriffs of counties to task for not being in compliance with this law, meaning that they themselves can become subject to arrest. Was that not a great law, Dan Butcher? And I got to ask, did you see that coming? Did you actually think that was going to be the result of the court case?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is based in New Orleans, they tend to be, they're not really a conservative court. They're not really a liberal court. They do tend to walk right down the middle of the line, and, hey, they do have a little common sense. Of course, here in the state of Texas, we've got just the opposite of what you have in California, where you have elected officials, all the way up to the governor advocating for the release of very dangerous criminals. We're not talking about illegal aliens that have come to the country to work hard for their families, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking about people that have broken the law, drunk drivers, rapists, murderers, repeat offenders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Gang members is the big at the top of the list, MS-13 and several other gangs besides that. So, but here in Texas, it even goes further than that. I know you mentioned, the sheriffs. This actually applies to any elected official. Any elected official can be tried and prosecuted. And this also goes for city officials, not just elected. If you're a city manager, if you're a police chief, et cetera, et cetera. You can be prosecuted too for this if there's ample evidence. So our sanctuary city law here in the state of Texas has a lot of teeth and a big bite to it as far as enforcement. And so that's the great thing about that. Now you still do have. Of course, you're going to have, like the city of Houston, they're going to try to, well, actually, surprisingly, the city of Houston has not tried to fight this. San Antonio, I thought, would be at the top of the list. They have not. Of course, on the Democrat side, you have the former sheriff of Dallas County running for governor, and she's making that a big issue as far as the sanctuary city law and stuff like that. It's going to actually fly up and bite her in the ass here in the state of Texas. If Abbott doesn't win by at least with 80% of the vote, I'll be surprised in that election. That's how secure he is as the governor here. So once again, that's got that law has a lot of bite to it, and a lot of common sense too. Because here in the state of Texas, part of our budget is we do finance a lot of the security along the Texas border with Mexico here. We put as far as border security, as far as National Guard and different things like that, in helping the local sheriff's departments along the border, the local police departments, in dealing with the two main issues along the border, are drug trafficking and human trafficking. Those are the two big issues, and in particular, the human trafficking is a big issue because usually you have a lot of underage girls that are being transported across the border and forced into, servitude, namely prostitution, strip clubs, stuff like that. And so they're trying to crack down on that. And this law certainly gives us a lot of something to work with. And it also enhances our border security, a lot of different measures there. So, once again, here in the state of Texas, we don't so much now have a problem. Illegals coming across the border is not the big problem. Now it is people, and this is true across the country, people overstaying their visas is the big problem and having to deal with that. And they disappear under the radar. But here in the state of Texas, I know that all of our elected officials have made doing something about the drug cartels. The drug cartels are very dangerous and very violent along the border, and people don't realize that. It's almost, you could even say that a lot of times could you make the case that because and to Mexico's credit, the Mexican government does try to do this. The ones that aren't bought and paid for by the cartels actually try to do something, namely the Mexican military. But there's only so much they can do. Our law enforcement officials here, our sheriff's departments, police departments, are so much more effective, but they're so dag-blasted dangerous. And then you throw the human trafficking into that as well. I think that is the big issue. Getting the cartels under control, and then doing something with the human trafficking. That is something a lot of people don't talk about. Usually we're focused on illegal immigration, stuff like that. There's so much more to this, and when you are a border state and you are here, you see a lot more of this, especially when you're reporting on it on a daily basis, like we do here in Texas. The human trafficking, folks, that is a tragedy. It's the stories that a lot of these folks go through, and it's not just young women that are forced into prostitution. It is young boys that are also forced into prostitution, forced into pornography, forced into being drug runners, living away, that type of stuff. And so we really, really want to focus on this stuff, and this is why this law is so important. And this is why sanctuary cities are so dangerous, BZ, because sanctuary cities are a haven to encourage these type of activities.
That was SB 4 that was signed. Governor Abbott signed it last year.
Right.
And basically, one of the aspects of it was it said that local jurisdictions have to comply with detainer requests. So,
yes.
Of course, all the standard folks stood up and objected. And what they said was that the detainers forced, and I liked that word that they use, it forced state or local police to hold illegal immigrants beyond their usual release time, which now their argument was that it infringed on their Fourth Amendment rights. But, a big but here, and a stop, including Judge Edith Jones. She wrote the court's opinion, and it was a 3-0 opinion. It was unanimous. She wrote the court's opinion and said, it's not clear that illegal immigrants are covered by the Fourth Amendment. Beyond that, she said, federal detainer requests are legitimate.
Right.
Now, if we can just get California to recognize this, as soon as you weigh in on that, I've got a little comment, a response that I had from somebody in law enforcement recently about Brown and Becerra, but you guys won a case, a big case.
We did. And here's the thing. Your home state there in California, this was a ruling they did not want to see, because the reason is a lot of the challenges that are going to take place in California, those are going to make their way. Of course, they're going to make it to the Ninth Circuit, and we know what's going to happen there.
Immaterial.
And then eventually, these cases are going to make it to the Supreme Court. So even going further, what does this Fifth Circuit ruling do? Of course, this is an appellate court ruling. It sets up a precedent for the Supreme Court to fall back on.
Yes.
To show the constitutionality and to show that, illegal immigrants do not have Fourth Amendment rights because they're not citizens.
You make an excellent point with that it sets an incredible precedent. And further, now we got Neil Gorsuch. And like I've said for years, whoever controls A, education, and B, SCOTUS, will generally have their hands on the control stick, on the big red handle of the United States of America. So Trump got Neil Gorsuch. I have to give McConnell some props because he was certainly very important in acquiring that as well in terms of some political shenanigans that the Democrats were attempting to play. But I told people this, and I think you may have heard it. I heard rumors to the effect last year, right after Trump was, it was late last year, just before January of this year, that Trump obviously got one SCOTUS appointment, and I heard that he's going to get another SCOTUS appointment sometime this summer. And then I said, I also believe that before the end of 2020, during his term, he will have the ability to nominate a third, and this is unprecedented, a third SCOTUS appointment. Well, A, Mark was true about Gorsuch, BZ was true about Gorsuch, and it turns out that BZ was also true because here's a GOP senator saying Justice Kennedy is going to retire this summer. Everyone was thinking that it was going to be Ginsburg. In the meantime, as I said, Ginsburg, man, leftists and Democrats have been propping her up, giving her steroids. She's running around on an intravenous line wherever she goes. But it turns out that it's Kennedy, and let's see, I think it was Dean Heller. He's a Republican dude in Nevada. He was saying in a speech either last week or this week that he thinks Kennedy is going to retire this summer. And Politico happened to get that particular information, and they shoved it out into an article. So another important point, because eventually, as you indicate, Dan Butcher, this stuff goes up to the United States Supreme Court. And to an effect, the DCAs and the lower courts are very important. And Trump has had a great ability to fill many of these vacancies, which is an excellent thing. But sooner or later, a lot of this crap goes up to SCOTUS.
Right.
And if we thought we saw a damn fight for Gorsuch, if Kennedy goes, depending on who it is that Trump nominates, you're going to see talons, claws, and veins between the teeth. You're going to see blood spatter all over the political landscape. Can you imagine what kind of a fight that's going to be this summer?
Well, let me tell you what's going to happen. The Democrats will try. If Kennedy does retire this summer, and of course Trump does make the nomination, the Democrats are going to try to stall that with every bit of everything they can do. Yep. They're going to try to stall that until after the November elections. And this is why we've been harping why this midterm election is so important, because the Republicans have to maintain control of the Senate. Now, it looks like they have a real good shot at doing that.
The Senate isn't that bad.
Right. And but they're going to control the House too. I know there's a lot of seats up, but they're going to control the House too. But they have to control the Senate, if for anything else, for the court appointments, because it's as important as the Supreme Court is. I would argue that the appointments on the lower courts are even more important, because, stop and think, only a handful of cases ever actually make it to the Supreme Court. Most things are settled on the lower courts. So it's very important with the appointments happening on the lower courts to return sanity to those lower courts. Now, coming back to the Supreme Court, the Democrats will fight any nomination tooth and nail with every fiber in their bodies, and then they'll try to stretch it out, hoping that they will win the Senate and head that off. But I think the Republicans probably have enough, and Trump's been pretty smart about because remember, all they need is a simple majority vote now. Right. They played the nuclear option, and they have the Democrats to thank for that.
Yes,
and so they will do it again. You watch McConnell do it. If it looks like they're going to try to fast track this along before the November elections, they will do that, and they will try to fast track it as fast as they can. And then in addressing Ginsburg, folks, Ginsburg will die in office. There is no way in hell she's going to retire.
Nope.
She will. That seat will come available whenever she passes away.
You couldn't have said it any better, which makes Donald Trump's ability to have made as many appointments as he did on the lower courts, and that went by a lot of the media, not yourself, of course, but a lot of other people. As you point out, it is very, very important on that. Now, we've got about another 8 minutes before the top of the hour. I'd like to transition, if I could, to another topic. I'm hoping that perhaps you have some more insider-type information for us, but the city of Austin, Texas, recently has been rocked by a series of bombings. And the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, Ted Kaczynski, because at one point he happened to be in our jail. And after this, as a matter of fact, let me go back a little bit. There was a man by the name of Hugh Scruton who literally had his lungs blown out from his body as he reached to pick up what happened to be one of Ted Kaczynski's devices behind a computer store in my district when I was in patrol. So I was one of the first people that was to respond to the scene after they'd had it all taped off and the CSI and whatnot were there. They found pieces of Hugh probably 50 yards away. But he was a great guy, a nice guy who had no one saw any of this coming. That's the first thing that went right into my mind. But it seems as though the media has picked up a linear thread, some common linkage throughout all of the bombings. So maybe you can fill us in on some of the things that have been going on in Austin.
Well, let me tell you, here's the thing. All of three, of course, we've had 2 people killed.
Right.
All 3 of the attacks were in a predominantly black neighborhoods. So this has the hallmarks of possibly being a true hate crime. This isn't one of these false narratives or anything like this. It looks like specifically like these people were targeted because of their race in the neighborhoods, etc. Now, here's what makes this interesting. Is, of course, they have no idea who has done this. Now, the person who's making the explosive devices is constructing them using common household items that the police say can be purchased at any hardware store, can be purchased at Walmart, etc. And, of course, since the items that are being used to construct these bombs are so common, it's making it very difficult to identify a suspect in this case. And so, so that's one of the things that that I thought was very interesting in this aspect is that this person definitely has a knowledge. The police have said that this is no amateur. This is a pro.
Okay.
They know what they're doing. It doesn't have the hallmarks of being foreign terrorism, but it certainly has the hallmarks in these type of attacks of being domestic terrorism. I mean, you're trying to terrorize a specific race and what have you. And so, right now, where they stand on the investigation, they pretty much have a good idea what all of the components of the bombs were. They have a pretty good idea. Of course, they don't have a motive, anything like that. They don't have any leads. What they're doing now is going back to a lot of the different hardware stores in the Austin area, going to the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the Walmarts, etc., looking at surveillance tapes, trying to identify people that were purchasing all of these items in bulk, seeing if they were, purchasing all the items at a particular store or what have you. And so maybe they'll be able to identify somebody that way. But so far, they have not seen anything suspicious in that aspect. They have no leads to go on. Nothing. No fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, nothing, BZ. The person that dropped these off just disappeared into thin air. And so once again, you have another case. This has you brought up the similarities between the Unabomber. For many, many years, nobody had a clue who the Unabomber was until
his very
own brother recognized the type of writings in the manifesto and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. This might be one of those cases. I certainly hope that this is something that doesn't go on for years like the Unabomber did, but I think it's going to be somebody somewhere is going to have to recognize something to give the police a big break in this case.
Well, they were package bombs. They were in Austin.
Right.
The families that were involved were what was typified as prominent black families.
Right.
Stephen House, he was killed on March 2nd, and then a guy named Draylen Mason was killed. And police have said already that there is a linkage there insofar as they knew each other for a long time, and apparently they both went to the same church. And then the third person was a 75-year-old lady named Esperanza Herrera.
Right.
And the Austin police said that the bombings are related, but they haven't really suggested a motive for it yet. But what's the overall thought or the attitude or the prevailing atmosphere in Austin and areas around it? Are people thinking, okay, we've got a bomber, and this bomber is going to expand his horizons?
Well, in Austin, what they're looking at is, of course, we put out, here in the state of Texas, we put out, and then we ran this warning on our websites as well, what to look for as far as suspicious packages and stuff like that. Basically right now, if you get a package that you're not expecting, if you're getting something from UPS that you've ordered or something like that, but you're okay. But if you get a package of any sort, whether it's just laying there on your doorstep, if it's in your mailbox or what have you, don't mess with it. Call the authorities. That's the attitude right now. If you're the slightest bit suspicious about it, and this just does it in Austin now. This is communities across the state, and so now they're thinking, okay, so what's going to happen now? With these package bombs, is this guy going to switch MOs now? Is he going to go into putting explosives in mailboxes? Is he going to go and maybe pull a Timothy McVeigh and try to find a big target? Of course, the nation's capital, the state capital is in Austin, so there is certainly a heightened sense of security in the capital right now. So you have lots of different things. Is he going to target a school? What's going to happen here? So there's a lot of different things going through people's minds. Certainly, here in our area, we're not so much on edge. I think people are a little cautious, but in the Austin area, they certainly are on edge and very cautious as to what is happening. Now, everybody's going about their daily routine and going about the business of life and stuff, but they're just sitting back going, it's not a matter of if, but just when this person strikes again. And here's the thing, too. The guy, everything always comes in threes, right? So the thought is when he strikes again, it will be in threes again. So there's kind of a pattern there. He struck 1, 2, 3 bombs over a couple of days here. So now you're looking at, okay, we're probably going to do 3 again. And so it's just, where is it going to happen? And so they're trying to be very proactive in warning the citizens to watch out for this, to watch out for that. If you see anything suspicious, if you see a guy that pulls up that's got a UPS uniform on, but he's getting out of a Ford Explorer, that's probably not a good thing. You might want to call the police. A lot of common sense things. But BZ, the attitude is that this guy is a serial bomber and is just going to keep doing it until he's caught.
We got about 30 seconds left before the top of the hour break, folks. We're talking to Dan Butcher, the owner and media magnate of High Plains Media. One final thing about the bombs. I noted in the article that I was reading that the devices were created specifically to go off when there's some kind of motion involved or shaking or jostling or something like that. So as Dan indicates, if you see something that's odd on your doorstep, wherever the hell it happens to be, the trigger switch generally is that goes off when it's moved, jostled, kicked, etc. So that's an excellent reason to go into protectorate mode, be safe, get away, don't have anything to do with it. Folks, we're going to take a break. It's the top of the hour. We're talking to Dan Butcher. We're going to be right back after this, so please, pretty please, don't go away.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is featured on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night for 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. Whilst manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ continues to radically change the world of leftists, one diaper at a time. Stop balancing your checkbooks. Stop cleaning your fish tanks. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is your magnet for truth, justice, obesity, a darkened studio, and late-night freedom. No United States of America freedoms were abridged in the making of this ad.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians, a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless, hope to the hopeless, clues to the clueless. Sackheads Sean, Sackheads Clint, and Sackheads BZ. The Sackheads Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern on SHRmedia.com. Watch on YouTube, Facebook, and the High Plains Pundit Network. The best in late-night conservative talk. The Sackheads Radio Show. Only on the SHR Media Network.
Go ahead, I'll say it again.
Some of the best A-roll is going to be B-roll.
Like, what are you talking about?
Just like the last question that you cut in a couple seconds.
Yeah, I'm a freaking artist. I can't just come up with this shit off the top of my head. Are you freaking kidding me right now?
Good point. Exactly right.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch Reaver Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint, and with Sackhead Sean, Sackhead BZ. No communists allowed on the SHR Media Network.
Damn straight, mister.
Back to the show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are in fact listening to the bloviating Zeppelin right here on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com where you can listen on Spreaker if you want to watch the show. We're back! We're back on YouTube. We had a 60-day detainer. We were placed on suspension, and each one of us, except me, I'm not an owner, but Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint both had to wear ankle monitors placed there by YouTube because YouTube got pissed off at SHR for a moment. But we're back on YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube on the SHR Media Network channel. You can also watch us on the SHR Media Facebook page. Dan, did you know that the two owners, not me, I'm not an owner. I want to tell you that up front. Okay, it's just them bad boys. It's not me. I want to differentiate the two, okay? Did you know that they were in YouTube jail?
I did know they were in YouTube jail, and it probably had something to do with the type of broadcast excellence that took place last night on Sackheads, which went to an all-new level. What a crazy-ass show you guys had last night. My God.
Are you saying that you actually...
from it now.
Did you actually laugh? Did you laugh? Did you actually find it amusing in some fashion?
Dude. Now, oh gosh, it was wild. BZ, I want to ask you about this.
Okay.
I just saw this, and I'm going to turn the tables here.
Okay.
I know this is your show, but I'm going to turn the tables for a second here, because I just saw this bullshit, and I want to get your thoughts on this.
Oh, well, it happened. That must be about California then.
Oh, it is about California.
There you go.
You have had an illegal immigrant, let's be correct now because it is California, undocumented immigrant appointed to a statewide post in the state of California. It's a 33-year-old woman became the first undocumented immigrant named to a statewide post, California. Her name is Elizabeth Mateo. She is an attorney and immigrant rights activist, and she was appointed to an advisory board that seeks to improve access to college for low-income California students, according to the Office of State Senate President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon. Now, listen to the name of it. And I wonder if you've heard of this. It's called Cal Soap. Yes, folks, Cal Soap for short. This is the California Student Opportunity and Access Program Project Grant Advisory Board.
Dan,
this is just nuts.
You can't write shit like this, okay? It absolutely cannot be written. I've told people for 3 weeks that I'm in the process of writing an article entitled, a blog post entitled, California is Insane. And I haven't published it yet because article after article like this happens to continuously come out about the state of California, proving that it is, in fact, fucking sane. However, now, before you got here, I told folks that I was going to reveal some information about a press conference that James Brown... No, we don't have a soul singer as president. He's dead, or as governor. Anyway, it was Jerry Brown was giving a news conference last Monday about sessions in the sanctuary cities and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, you may not recognize or realize, folks, that Sessions dropped some paperwork, literally, on Governor Jerry Brown and AG Attorney General Xavier Becerra. They gave a press conference, and an insider to that press conference said that as they were speaking about, they were literally served papers by the federal government. Now, they gave a press conference, and for once, don't know exactly how or why. The conference is 27 minutes long. I put it on Twitter. If you go to my Twitter feed and look at my list there, you can see the whole thing. But at one point, there were actually a couple of reporters in the audience who began to ask very pointed questions of Brown and Becerra, and all they did was hem, haw, verbally tap dance, and obfuscate, and they did not really give any answer whatsoever, which to me is amazingly revelatory. This state is unsustainable. Number one, it is insane. It literally is insane. There are still some good people in this state. Thank you for asking the question. And when I get through with that post, that's going to take up that one post, I suspect, is going to take up the entire 2 hours of a particular show that I'm going to give, because I have over 50 articles, instance after instance, demonstrating literally why California is insane. But you open that door, Dan, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk through it. Now, that was bad. That was stupid. And trust me when I tell you that California is regaling. They are rejoicing to have an illegal alien, undocumented. Homie doesn't play with that crap. An illegal alien appointed who was an illegal advocate. You would expect no less of California. Right. No less. You expect that. I mean, come on. It's Fornicali after all. But there now is, and the precedent has been set. We talked about that a little bit earlier. This just came out. Here's an article that I believe maybe even you may not have heard yet. The illegal alien who was acquitted in a California court for murdering Kate Steinle, now he's going to sue the feds for, God, I wish I had a producer so I could play this, for vindictive prosecution. So that guy named Jose Inez Garcia Zarate, he was an illegal immigrant. He was acquitted last year of murdering, literally murdering, in my opinion, 32-year-old Kate Steinle. And that was back in 2015. He's suing the federal government, demanding that it proffers documents that are, quote, pertaining to vindictive prosecution and collusion with the state government, with the state of California, if you can imagine that, in its prosecution against him. So that was, let's see, that was November when the jury found that he wasn't guilty. And the only thing that they found is that he was in felony possession of a weapon. Now, he had 7 previous drug offenses, convictions, right. not just charges, but actual convictions. And he had been deported 5 times. He's found guilty in a California court of not guilty of everything except felony possession of a firearm, and that's it. So he's charging that the federal agencies, and this is a quote, I'm quoting now, literally, he colluded with the San Francisco police. He colluded with the district attorney's office, federal agencies colluded with the San Francisco, with SFPD, the district attorney's office, and the sheriff's office, and that he was subjected to double jeopardy. He was tried for the same crime twice. Dan, that's how insane this state is. That we would, number one, find him not guilty. But on the other hand, it's California. You should have seen this coming. And then once found not guilty, he's using that as a stepping stone to sue the feds over collusion. AYFKM. Are you fucking kidding me? That's California for you. So you brought it up, and I walked through that door. Good God. There are 2 other stories, though, that have come up recently. One, let's see. This, I think, is interesting, and I really would like to have your input on this. Oh, before we go there, we got about 15 more minutes to the bottom of the hour. Is that okay with you to go another 15?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, great. Here's a story that just came out today, and I happened to see these 2 guys speaking. I don't remember the show. It might have been Martha McCallum. I'm not sure. But Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham were speaking to her, and now they're asking for a prosecution, a second counsel to investigate all of the things that have been going on with regard to the FBI, the DOJ, the FISA court, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and ultimately that leads to James Comey, to Loretta Lynch, I believe to Eric Holder, and it goes all the way up, potentially, I believe, to Barack Hussein Obama. The second counsel, so I'd like to throw it open to you. First, do you think it's going to happen? And number 2, why a second counsel, and do you think it could be effective?
No, and no. And
okay.
Here's why.
That's succinct.
They're not going to get a second special counsel on this. I mean, let's face it. Mueller will be fired before you get a second counsel on this. Because the thing is, the Trump administration wants this over and done with as soon as possible, because Donald Trump sees this as they keep using. Let's face it, they keep. You have to remember the Republicans on the House Intel Committee came out and said, hey, we saw nothing. There's nothing. There's no Russian collusion.
Correct.
Well, then the Democrats come out with all of this made-up evidence. Well, this and this and this. Well, folks, the stuff that they presented was stuff that was already refuted by the report from the Republicans on the Intel Committee. So you just shake your head. It's the same stuff. The reason they keep bringing this up is to try to stall President Trump's agenda. He has been steadfast in trying to keep his campaign promises, trying to go forward with his presidential agenda. And boy, you think, let me tell you something. If we do end up with like another Supreme Court nominee, Russian collusion, what connection did the Supreme Court nominee have to Trump and the Russians? You watch. That will come up and will be at the forefront of everything. So, I don't think you're going to see another special counsel. They want to get and here's the thing. I think Mueller's investigation is winding down because the deals are being made. There's everything that's been found so far, like we've said before, has unveiled other crimes.
Yes.
You're talking about
yes.
You're talking about Manafort and Carter Page. They weren't found to be colluding with the Russians, but hey, we discovered that they were doing some illegal business practices and money laundering. Hey, there's something cool. Let's do that. And so that's what they are being prosecuted for. They're not. But if you listen to the liberal media, you think it's Russian collusion. That has nothing to do with what they're actually trying to plea bargain with, out of, testify against each other about, and what they've actually been charged with. Has nothing to do with Russian collusion. Has everything to do with other crimes, white-collar crimes, that they'd been doing for years, long before they were ever involved with Trump. So, moving forward, I think eventually, I think by the end of the summer, I really think this is going to start to wrap up because I think the Democrats have figured out that the Russian collusion is going to go nowhere. So guess what they're going to move on to next?
Yeah, that's my next question.
They're going to try to turn Donald Trump into Bill Clinton concerning a certain relationship that he may or may not have had with a porn star. That's what they're going to start focusing on.
And that ain't going nowhere either. I truly believe it's not going to go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere with the voters. It was allegedly a 2007 event. The voters, let me be frankly very blunt because it's late night talk radio. The voters didn't give a flying fuck about that information back in 2016. And I really don't think they give a Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, traveling trapeze fuck about it right now. One final thing, and I have some very serious thoughts that don't make me happy, but I'm going to throw it over to you. It was revealed today that various videos came out with regard to the that Broward County Deputy Scott Peterson.
Right.
And the videos now have him standing outside of the various I think it was building 1200, something like that, the building, while the shooting was going on, and just when the Broward sheriff was saying, no, it didn't quite happen like that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think initially before he lawyered up, I think Scott Peterson himself said, no, that's not exactly what happened. Now the video has been released. Let me tell you one thing, because I used to help teach this. And when my portion of it came up in terms of active shooter situations, I decided that a good relation a good way to get people to understand the criticality of an event like that was, think of a situation like this as a stroke. Minutes lost equals brain lost. And then you apply it to an active shooter situation, whether it be in a school or any other building. Minutes lost are lives lost.
Right.
That's the way I taught it. Apparently, Broward County doesn't believe in that, but I don't know. I have to admit up front, I do not know each and every minuscule fact about this situation. However, in the means and manner in which it has been presented to me, including the articles that I've read, the videos that I've watched, I find this not only just a disappointing event, not just a disturbing event, but I have no other place to go. I'm backed into a corner. I find this a despicable event. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, if you've listened to basically when the sheriff of Broward County made his initial statements, I think he has, certainly the videotape that was released today certainly backs up his initial statement. It certainly goes against Peterson actually said that he was following protocol,
right,
that he thought there was an active shooter outside, and that he was to set up in a position to be able to try to find and determine where the shooter was and stuff like that. They were supposed to stay in place, set up a command, whatever. Certainly that's not the case, because you saw him walking around, then they went out of their way to get onto the golf cart, and then they're driving the golf cart around the campus and different things like that. And so obviously the video that was shows that certainly does not back up his side of the story and what he claims were his actions, what have you. And I do believe that the 911 calls and a lot of the radio dispatch stuff also goes against Peterson's story, and definitely backs up the sheriff as saying, hey, we're not sure what happened here. We don't know if he froze, if he just refused to go in because he was planning to retire the next day, what have you. Because, versus facing suspension, he immediately retired. This was a guy that was planning to retire. So there's lots of different things that come into play here. We can all say there's, how we would react and how this would react, how we should do, what have you. Police officers are trained to react to different situations. Certainly, in my opinion, having covered police beat and law enforcement beat for many years as a reporter, certainly those type of actions that I saw out of this particular officer went against every grain of known police training that I have ever seen, and you could probably correct me on that. But it seems like it just went against every fiber of all the training that this guy probably had received over the years. But I can't put myself in his shoes. I wasn't in the situation. So it's kind of where we're at with this. Certainly, could he have made a difference? Maybe so. I go back to I go back and I talk about how I would react. I would have acted just like the football coach. I would have tried to eliminate the threat, or at least, if I got to take a few shots to save a few of these kids' lives, I've lived a good life already. These guys are young. I want to get them out of here, do everything I can to protect them and eliminate the threat. That's just me. Other people would do different things. So the different officers would do. If he had gone in and reacted and possibly confronted the shooter, he may have saved a few lives. Maybe not. He may have lost his own life. It just depends on how the situation plays out. The fact that, and I think getting lost here is, you have to remember there were other sheriff's deputies that did respond to the scene as well, and they did not go in.
Correct.
And these guys are currently on suspension. So
Coral Springs Police went in first.
Yes.
This is a Broward County responsibility, and Coral Springs Police went in first. Excuse me when I go 210 over 190 over this. Every law enforcement agency and every officer, including myself for 41 years, was evaluated on what I call the triumvirate of negligence, and that is there's negligence in training, negligence in hiring, negligence in training, and negligence in retention. Now, with that in mind, each officer has a certain plateau that they must acquire, for lack of a better word. They all make decisions based on, again, another triumvirate: training, education, and experience. After Columbine in 1999, active shooter, federal dollars, for God's sake, were paid out to various departments to begin active shooter training programs. This guy was an SRO. He was a school resource officer. Now, granted, it's a huge campus, numerous building, 3,000 students. But if you hear shots fired on your campus as the SRO, you do not get on the radio, you do not get outside, you stay outside for 20 minutes as 17 students are killed, including teachers for that matter, and make a radio broadcast that says, do not approach the 12 or 1,300 building, stay at least 500 feet away. Are you a moron or are you a coward? Because it's the exact opposite of what it is that we teach and train to. That's no plateau. That's no reflection of training. That's no reflection of any education. This guy froze. That was his job. His job wasn't patrol, Dan. His job wasn't detectives. His job was a school resource officer, and his sole duty, and I don't know if there were more, but I don't believe there were any more people there, and that's a massive mistake on Broward County's part, and if they don't rectify that soon, there's going to be even a more massive problem. But he didn't even do his damn job. Now, I went back to look, because you mentioned some of the training issues and some of the statutes. We have general orders, they have general orders. At no point, and I can see where you can use some weasel words in this, because in none of the general orders with regard to active shooter situations does the Broward County orders say must or shall, which are imperatives with regard to that. And I will also throw these statistics out as well. 20 to 25% of the first responders to an active shooter situation, that is to say law enforcement, get shot or they get killed themselves. However, there's a 75% chance that the first responding officer, if he or she is cautious and using officer safety, will be able to nullify the shooter as quickly as possible. This was an unusual situation in terms of the shooter, the killer, got rid of the gun and walked away. Primarily, they shoot themselves at the scene at the first sight of some kind of a police response. We got about another minute and a half left. Dan, any final thoughts on that, for example?
Well, once again, there's a lot of different things that came into play. Training, different things, what have you. And bottom line is, my personal opinion is, if Peterson had engaged the shooter, whether, here's my thing. If I had been, I'm the type of police officer, if it was up to me, even if my training dictated I needed to stay back, set up a whatever, I would have said the hell with the training.
Yes.
I'm going to go try to save as many lives as I possibly can. That's me. But here's the thing. Because of the inaction, I personally think Peterson could have saved a few lives.
Yep.
But the Broward County Sheriff's Department deputies, they were the first responders. They were the first on the scene. Because they failed to engage, I think there were more lives lost. Maybe there may not have been any lives lost, but certainly I think they could have prevented a few more lives from being lost, and they certainly possibly could have, apprehended the suspect before he got out of the school and was on the loose in the community for over 40 minutes. Think about that.
Yeah.
Because of the inaction, he was able to escape from the school, and he could have caused, if he had access to more weapons, and what have you, he could have caused even more chaos out in the public other than just at the school.
Absolutely true. Dan Butcher, thanks for being with us tonight. Before we go, I want you to tell everyone where you can be read, where you can be found, your primary sites, and what you do. Dan Butcher, please let everybody know.
Well, we do a little bit of everything, BZ. You can get us. Our main site, of course, is hpdailynews.com. That gets you to the High Plains Daily News, High Plains Talk Radio, everything that we do here. Of course, we are the largest regional news and information site in the state of Texas, something that we do not take for granted.
Nice.
Also, I'd like to let everybody know, High Plains Talk Radio, which, of course, we play a lot of the shows from SHR Media. If you visit High Plains Talk Radio, notice that we've made a lot of changes to it. We've added a lot of new stuff. We have AP Radio News. We've also added some new hosts, including Steven Crowder, Michael Savage, and the Savage Nation has returned to High Plains Talk Radio. Andrew Clavin, Ben Shapiro, and then, of course, on the sports side, we've added Colin Cowherd, and we've added Tony Kornheiser as well with their respective talk shows. So a lot of new things, a lot of exciting things taking place for us at the High Plains Daily News and High Plains Talk Radio. High Plains Daily News. Folks, you need to go there because, after all, it's daily news. Hello, common sense, Captain Obvious. Dan Butcher, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. With luck and crossed phalanges, we'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you for your time very much. You have a great night. You bet. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you, sir. Folks, we're going to have to take a break. This is the last break. This is the final section of the show, and we'll come back. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We actually have YouTube back. I'm still kind of blown away about that. So don't go away. I will be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch Reaver Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Hey guys, this is Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Check us out every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network.
And this is Sackhead Clint, as the best-looking one of the bunch. It's my duty to remind you to check us out on our YouTube channel.
And don't forget to check us out on the SHR Media Facebook page. The best-looking one? Really? You going to go there?
Every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on the SHR
Voters' Choice.
Media
I have the award
Network.
right here.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The Right Guy on SHR Media.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show.
And Sackheads BZ.
Wait, I'm Sean.
No, I'm Sean.
All right, listen, we'll figure this out every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on the
Where the hell is Clint?
On the SHR Media Network, www.shrmedia.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Now, right back to this amazing show right here on the SHR Media Network.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is the final segment of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, 2 miles or less, perhaps, give or take a couple of feet, from the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the capital of the state of California. The capital in Sacramento. It's evil, it's musty, and the stench of odoriferous sulfur envelops, sometimes late at night after the magic witching hour, it envelops the entire downtown area, corrupting with all its evil leftist forces as many people as possible, children and animals included, even when they're asleep. Can you think of anything more evil than that? I cannot. You know, we've been told for quite some time that to build a wall is bad, and that, well, for example, walls don't work. Well, here's an example where Donald Trump happened to speak to a U.S. Border Patrol agent who said that, it's actually a piece of scrap metal that works.
If you could, Lance, the president is speaking at the moment, and let's listen in.
I started here in 1992. And what was it like until you built the wall? And the wall, by the way, is that wall up there, which is just sheet metal, but still at least it works a little bit. How was it before you built the wall?
So there was effectively no border in San Diego. It was a chaotic situation.
There was effectively no border wall in San Diego, the border between California and Mexico. It was a chaotic situation.
This fence behind me, it was made out of scrap metal that the military wasn't using, that we set in place to really just...
The military wasn't using a piece of metal, so one United States Border Patrol agent decided that he, taking it upon himself, is going to put a piece of metal in a strategic location on the border. Are you kidding me?
Delineate the border once again.
You needed something.
And it changed our environment. We went from, we decreased the illegal cross-border traffic by 95%.
95%. AYFKM. Are you fucking kidding me?
With that fence and the roads and the lights and the technology.
So that's 95% with a scrap metal wall that they just put together with excess material. And it worked 95%. And that wall they can get over very easily. These walls they can't. But, you know, for the people that say no wall, if you didn't have walls over here, you wouldn't even have a country. You wouldn't even have a country. And by the way, the state of California is begging us to build walls in certain areas. They don't tell you that. And we said, no, we won't do it until we build the whole wall. But there are certain areas, as you know, where they're really wanting us to build a wall. And because the people are complaining, people are pouring in. So, you know, they don't talk about that. We have a preference.
No, stop. Can you imagine being in any of the border states, New Mexico, Arizona, California? Can you imagine being in a border state and you yourself personally, you own property at the border? Do you think you might be a little upset with the situation that you have been seeing, developing, and now enveloping you for decades?
Well, I do have a preference. The problem is you have to have see-through. You have to know what's on the other side of the wall. And, I mean, a preference is something like that. The problem is you don't know what's on the other side of the wall. And if you don't know what's on, I mean, you could be 2 feet away from a criminal cartel and you don't even know they're there. Now, we have equipment to take care of that, X-ray equipment, etc. But if you're on that side of the wall, that's the hardest wall to scale. It's got a lot of assets. The problem is, tell them, what do you think about the important...
That was a pretty good interview. I have one, however, that's even better. And I've said it for quite some time because we're going to shift gears again. I got a lot of stories that I'm going to try to cover, and I've only got about 17 minutes or 15 minutes yet to do it tonight, the last show of the week. Another leftist argument is the fact that with regard to shootings, statistically shootings, by the way, have been going down. They've been trending down, except for a few Democrat bastions, like, say, Baltimore, or cities that are controlled by leftists and Democrats, say, Chicago. But statistically speaking, shootings have been going down. They peaked in the 90s when I happened to be a detective in robbery and homicide, and the blood was everywhere. I was in robbery, investigating robberies, and the same people that were my suspects in robberies turned out that they were homicide suspects as well, which is why I transferred from robbery to homicide. I was seeing the same people. Well, that's a shock. But you have to ask yourself in terms of leftists, shootings, what are they focusing on? They're not focusing on anything that has anything whatsoever to do with people. They're focusing on an inanimate object. They're focusing on the tool, the firearm. 50s, 60s, 70s. Did we have shootings like this in schools? No, we didn't. So you have to, any logical thinking human being has to sit down and ask themselves, well, logic, thinking, crafting a logical response, that leaves leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots out by dint of that. But you have to ask yourself, a clear thinker must ask themselves, firearms, so what has changed since, say, the 50s and now? Is it the firearm? Is it an inanimate object? Is it a tool? Or is it everything else? And I suggest it's everything else. I found, and I'll be frank, courtesy of Tammy Jackson, brought this to my attention with one of her tweets. And I wish I'd found it first. And I wish I'd played it first. I wish I'd played it. I may end up playing this every show. Because here is Kentucky Governor Matt Bevins, who in a 3-minute and 20-second piece, and you're going to have to maybe turn it up, fiddle around with the audio a little bit. It's a little bit difficult to determine, and I may end up making the transcript out of this because what he says is so critically important. In 3 minutes and 20 seconds, he eviscerates and skewers every leftist argument that they make with regard to handguns. And he says essentially the same thing that I've been saying for quite some time. He's asked by the media, essentially, how are you responding and or what do you think about the recent shooting in Parkland, Florida. I wish it were a clearer recording, but I think you'll be able to pull out every salient piece, every sentence that he's saying. Just listen carefully. If I cannot think of a more brilliant, off-the-cuff remark and answer to a question like this. I don't think many people could have sat for hours and come up with such a cogent and logical response as what the governor here of Kentucky has said.
Obviously, with the latest school shooting in the news, what do you tell people that are going for more gun control and keeping guns off the streets?
Again, here's what I'll say. 100 years ago and even 50 years ago, we had more guns per capita in America than we do now. It's not a gun problem. Guns in these instances have been involved, clearly. Guns have often been involved when people have lost their lives. But the reality is it's not a gun problem. It's not having too many guns. There used to be more guns per person in America than there are now, but children did not go to school and kill other children. When I was a kid, especially after Christmas, people brought their guns to school. My friends, we'd get a new shotgun, get a 22 or something, you'd come to school and show it to your friends. It was supposed to stay outside in your truck, which may or may not have been locked. But kids would bring them on the buses. Sometimes they would be in kids' lockers. Nobody even thought about shooting other people with them. So it's not a gun problem. What I would say to those for whom that is the solution, get a new idea, because that is not the solution. It is a cultural problem. We have a culture that is desensitized to death. That is
Stop. It is a cultural problem.
Desensitized to the value of life. And we celebrate death through our musical lyrics. We celebrate death through video games that literally reward you with extra points for going back and finishing people off. It is horrific, and it is graphic, increasingly realistic. The television shows that now are even on primetime. Movies, again, these are things that have long existed. But the degree of specificity, the graphic nature of them, the encouraging of people to participate in the form of video games, and then the belief that none of this is connected to what we're seeing, give me a break. We've removed any responsibility from the homes and from communities, from schools and from churches, from things that once were the background and the foundation of the mores of a nation. We've told these people to keep a lid on it, keep that in your own mind. So we've removed any sense of right or wrong. We've infused that with a whole lot of do whatever, including taking human life, and then we're shocked when people do it. We got to grow up here in America. We got to be serious about the fact this is a cultural problem. And in America, at every level, from the homes that we live in to the White House and everywhere in between, we need to have a frank and honest dialogue about the cultural reasons for young people killing young people. It's not the gun, because they could just as easily run kids over while they're waiting in line to get on a school bus. What is the mindset that's causing young people to kill other young people? That's what needs to be addressed.
Is there any evidence that drawing the connection to video games and movies and this behavior?
Again, go back before any of these existed. How many children walked into schools and slaughtered other children? How much more evidence do you need? You have 17 more dead children in Florida. We had a couple dead children a few weeks ago here in Kentucky. How much more evidence do people want? But I'll tell you another thing, too, as long as we're talking about this. We talked today about a company that's looking at the pharmacodynamic effect of certain drugs and the pharmacogenomic effect of certain drugs.
Drugs, stop. Drugging males, drugging young children because boys have the temerity to act like boys.
Human being has a different physiology. And you look at the number of children that have been involved in these shootings who are on some kind of psychiatric drug. Listen, go watch a football game, watch a basketball game. I don't care what they're advertising. It could be for constipation, it could be for PTSD, it could be for anything in between. You listen to the little disclaimer at the end. How many of them have very specific warnings about suicidal thoughts, and thoughts of self-harm, and thoughts of depression? These are the catalysts for some of what we're seeing in these schools. Let's not kid ourselves. If we fail to talk about that by having knee-jerk responses about more rules needed for this, that, or the other thing, we are intentionally misleading ourselves, and that is a mistake. There will never be a perfect solution for keeping evil in a box, but we can be a lot smarter by talking about the societal impact of encouraging certain behaviors that have absolutely no upside for America.
I cannot think of a more cogent argument to be made by anyone else if they'd had a couple of hours to sit and write that. I find that precisely accurate. And that transitions into this final article, which again gets very, very detailed. And it's something that a lot of people don't want, but the left seems to be pushing it. So Kurt Schlichter in an article seems to, if you want to go there, we can go there. It came out on the 14th yesterday on townhall.com. By Kurt Schlichter, it says, why Democrats would lose the second Civil War. It's obvious the central tenet of the Democrat Party platform is now hatred and contempt for normal Americans. Taking their cue from the elites in Europe and Canada who are stripping dissenters of their free speech rights and religious freedoms, the leftist elite is moving to solidify its hold on power here, and with the eager assistance of tech companies and the moral support of the Freedocons, who yearn to return to pseudo-relevance as the ruling class's slobberingly loyal opposition. In California, the leftist government is practically firing on Fort Sumter, and nationally, these aspiring fascists are especially eager to disarm normal Americans. Doing so would be an object lesson in who's the boss, as well as solving that frustrating problem of the normals having the ability to resist. Probably because I've spent time where they actually had a civil war. Many people ask me, people whose names you know, whether I think this turmoil will all end in a second civil war. They are seriously concerned, and not without cause. The left's hatred for normal Americans and its dedication to totally stripping the people who are the backbone of this country of their ability to participate in their own governance is threatening to rip the country apart. Do I think there will be a civil war? No, but there could be. This is the age of black swans, and anything is possible. We could easily see the country split into red and blue. Civil war is unlikely, but never underestimate Democrat stupidity and hatred. The Schlichter family learned that lesson a century and a half ago. The last time the Democrats decided to try to impose their hatred of basic human rights on the rest of the country, when an army of Democrats burned our family hometown. Oh, they paid for it. And they would pay again. Democrats are 0 for 1 in insurrections. And if they went for another round, they would be 0 for 2. It's a matter of terrain, numbers, and morale. Democrats who think history began when Obama was elected don't understand the dangerous game they're playing when they talk about how they want to impose their brown shirt vision upon red America. The keyboard commandos of the left seek to hand-wave away the massive strategic challenge of imposing control by force upon a well-armed, decentralized citizenry occupying the vast majority of the territory, so they babble about drones and tanks and counterinsurgency trump cards. But there are no trump cards in war. There are men with rifles standing on patches of dirt, killing the people trying to push them off. That is the ugly reality of war. And multiply the usual brutality of war by 10 when it is a civil war. There are 2 Civil War II scenarios, and the left is poorly positioned to prevail in either one. The first scenario is that the Democrats take power and violate the Constitution in order to use the apparatus of the federal government to suppress and oppress normal Americans. In that scenario, red Americans are the insurgents. In the second scenario, which we can even see now, we can see the stirrings of in California's campaign to nullify federal immigration law. It's the blue states that are the insurgents. The Democrats lose both wars, big time. Let's talk terrain and numbers. Remember the famous red versus blue voting map? There's a lot of red. And in the interior, the few blue splotches they're all cities like Las Vegas or Denver. That's a lot of territory for a counterinsurgent force to control, and this is critical. The red is where the food is grown, the oil pumped, and through which everything is transported, and that red space is filled with millions of American citizens with small arms, a fairly large percentage of whom have military training. Remember what those 2 untrained idiots did in Boston with a couple of pistols. They shut a city down. Now, multiply that by several million with better weapons and training. Let's look at the counterinsurgent forces in the Democratic oppression scenario, should they attempt to misuse our law enforcement and military in an unconstitutional manner to take the rights of American citizens. There are a lot of civilian law enforcement officers, but the vast majority of the agencies are local. Sheriffs, small-town police departments. They will not be reliable allies in supporting unlawful oppression of their friends and neighbors. The major cities' police departments are run by Democrat appointees, so the commands would be loyal. But the rank and file? A small percentage would be ideologically loyal. More would be loyal because that's their paycheck. They could be swayed or intimidated to support the rebels. Others would be actively sympathetic to the insurgents. This is true of federal law enforcement agencies as well. And the military. Well, wouldn't the military just crush any resistance? Not so fast. By the way, folks, we are going to go into overtime. Not so fast. The military would have the combat power to win any major engagement, but insurgents don't get into major engagements with forces that have more combat power. They instead leverage their decentralized ability to strike at the counterinsurgents' weak points to eliminate the government's firepower advantage. In other words, hit and run, and no stand-up fights. For example, how do a bunch of hunters in Wisconsin defeat a company of M1A2 Abrams tanks? They ambush the fuel and the ammo trucks. Oh, and they wait until the gunner pops the hatch to take a leak and put a .30-06 round in the back from 300 meters. Then they disappear. What do the tanks do then? Go level the nearest town? Great. Now they just move the needle in favor of the insurgents among the population. Pretty soon they can't be outside of their armored vehicles in public. Their forces are spending 90% of their efforts not on actual counterinsurgency operations, but on force protection. Sure, they own their forward operating bases. They own a few hundred meters around them, wherever they happen to be standing at the moment, but the rest of the territory is bright red. As my recent novel illustrates, American guerrillas with small arms are a deadly threat to the forces of a dictatorship. Stop just for a second. Why is it, by the way, that you think that Kurt Schlichter happens to be so incredibly detailed about what may possibly happen? Do you think that he was in the military? Because if you answered yes, you would be entirely correct. So he thinks strategically and in terms of tactics. He continues, but the military is so big it would overwhelm any rebels, right? Well, how big do you think the military is? And more importantly, how many actual boots on the ground can it deploy? Let's put it in terms of brigade combat teams, which total about 4,500 troops each. There are about 60 brigades in the Army, active and reserve, here and abroad, and let's give the Marines another 10 brigades for about 70 brigades. Sounds impressive, but that's deceptive. Let's put aside a big consideration, the existence of red states that would provide for an insurgent government structure and possibly attract the loyalty of some National Guard and even federal brigades. For example, if President Hillary Clinton put down her Chardonnay long enough to sign a ban on privately owned guns, it's not unreasonable to expect the governor of Texas to reject federal authority. After all, California just taught us that this is like so totally cool, dude. But in this case, look for several brigades located there to hoist the Lone Star flag. So now, the blue states are facing unconventional and conventional forces. Let's ignore that problem and focus on a different challenge. Even a normal unit has about 10% non-deployable members. Now, if these troops were assigned to combat operations against other Americans, you would have significant additional losses through desertion. Many of the senior leaders would participate, the Obama generation, and there's a certain type of junior officer only too happy to curry favor by sucking up in defiance of their oath, which is to the Constitution, not to some leftist president. You can identify them because they usually have strategist in their Twitter bios. But a lot of key, capable officers and NCO leaders and enlisted troops would vanish. That's proper. It is a violation of their oath to unconstitutionally oppress fellow Americans. Their duty would be to refuse such unlawful orders. So, you have significantly understrength units going in. Now, how many of those troops in a brigade are actually even frontline combat troops? Well, that's about a third. The rest are support. So a brigade is really about 1,500 riflemen tops before you count losses. Cut those in half for sleep, training, and refitting at any one time, which is very generous. And your brigade is really 750 troops on your best day with everyone showing up. Listen to this. Realistically, it's 300. That holds one mid-sized town, and there are hundreds of mid-sized towns. Plus, there are millions of normal Americans who would fight back. Nothing would move without their permission. A few guys shooting up big rigs along the interstate would shut down the entire trucking industry. Bottom line, there simply are not enough military forces to clear and hold Red America. Well, what about bombs and drones? Both are useful. But the minute a bombing strike kills some red civilians, the families of counterinsurgent drone operators and pilots will be knocking at the base gates to be let inside. Now you'll need many of those brigades to protect the civilians you now need to protect from retribution. Civil wars are harsh. That's why you avoid them. Now, how about the blue insurgency scenario? That goes even worse for the Democrats. You have the federal government apparatus in the hands of Red America, and the insurgents are the opposite of decentralized and armed. They are conveniently centered in gun-unfriendly blue cities. In other words, the blue civilian population is much less of a threat. A red counterinsurgency avoids the problem of a decentralized insurgency and insecure logistical lines. In the case of California, whose secessionist antics are approaching the point where President Trump could legitimately employ his power to crush insurrections, the tactical problem, and funny, isn't that odd? That's what we talked about last night on Sackheads Radio. If you go back and listen to it, either on YouTube or you go back and listen to it either on the SHR Facebook Live page, we talked about exactly that. For example, San Francisco is a hotbed of treason, but the populace is largely unarmed and it is trapped in a confined area. You put a brigade on securing the Golden Gate and the Bay Bridges, then put a brigade on the San Francisco Peninsula to cut off the I-280 and US 101 corridors. Next, you go to the Crystal Springs Dam and cut off the water. Then you watch and wait as the tech hipsters run out of artisanal sushi rice and kombucha. About a week, maybe so, about a week, they surrender. After all, you can't eat and drink smugness. L.A. is just bigger in scope, more corridors to cut off, but in the end, the population concentrations in large, liberal urban areas that are their strength also make them extremely vulnerable to logistical pressure. Then there's another factor. An intangible but a crucial one, it's commitment. The Democrat threat to peace is based on its policies designed to deprive normal Americans of their right to speak freely, to worship freely, and to defend themselves and their rights with firearms. Make no mistake, millions of normal Americans are willing to risk death to defend those rights. In fact, many swore to do so when they entered our military and law enforcement. And who is the leftist big talker willing to die to impose the fascist dream of censorship, religious oppression, and disarmament on normal American citizens? Is it the screeching social justice warrior at Yale going to suit up in Kevlar? Is the Vox columnist going to grab an M4? Is the Hollywood poser going to switch her gyno beanie for a helmet? No. Hell, we just heard our liberal opponents explaining why a cop shouldn't be expected to go fight a scumbag murdering kids because it's scary. America might split apart, but it's highly unlikely Team Kale and Vinyl would fight should their big talk finally push normal America too far. I think I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm an oath keeper. The oath that I took to defend the Constitution of the United States of America, I took it very seriously. I'm a sheepdog. There are sheep, sheepdogs, and wolves. I may be retired, but I'm an old, nasty fuckstick with a lot of training, education, and experience. And what do we know about people like these? They have a lot of I don't give a fuck within them. I think you could probably count me or put me in that category as well.
Monsieur has unlocked.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I got to tell you this. Thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. I want to thank Dan Butcher for spending time here in the saloon. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at bzep, on my blog, bloviatingzeppelin.net, my email, bz@shrmedia.com. My original music on the intro is by Possessed Tranquility. You can find them at reverbnation.com. Promotional consideration for tonight's show is by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And also by Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust, You Can Trust. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. You can trust me on that one and take it to the bank. And thank you ever so kindly for listening live, for listening in podcast, for being in the chat room, for listening anytime, every time. Oh my God, we've been liberated from YouTube prison. God bless. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.